Salam sejahtera and a very good evening. You are tuning into Agenda Awani with me, Cynthia Ng. We have a special guest tonight on the show, Minister of Finance, Tengku Dato Zafrul Aziz. Thank you so much for making time to be with Awani again, because I think the last time you were here live, we were just about 2 weeks into the MCO, and now we are restarting the economy next week, next Monday. So I think we have plenty to talk about, but first I think Dato Sri, I'd like to start with the moratorium issue regarding the 6-month payment deferment for hire purchase and also the fixed rate Islamic financing, because there has been a lot of confusion on this matter. Before this, we were made to understand that we didn't have to pay an interest for our car loan if you take up the moratorium. So my question to you is, has there been a reversal on this decision?
Yep. Well, talking about moratorium, let me break it into two parts. First is the announcement by the central bank. This is regarding the need for customers' consent if you want to take the moratorium, right? Because automatically, as announced by the central bank before, you as a customer is eligible for the automatic moratorium for all the household loans, and so SMEs also can apply. So in this case, for hire purchase, under the Hire Purchase Act and also under the Sharia guidelines, you can't do the moratorium, you can't have the moratorium without the consent of the customer. So there is a process now, it's a procedural step that has to be taken where customers now, consent is now required. So it's a very simple process. Some banks are just sending SMS detailing what is required, and you just have to reply yes or no. You don't have to fill any new application form. So that's the first part. I think that's not so controversial. It's a step that was not mentioned earlier. What was, in a way, confusing is, as what you said regarding the hire purchase installments, right? So the hire purchase installments, there has been some illustrations by certain parties that you don't have to pay the accrued interest, right? So basically what I mean here is that if you are paying 100 ringgit every month installment, so that means for the next 6 months, it's be 100 ringgit each month. So then if you take the moratorium, you don't have to pay the 600, and the 600 will be paid later. So if your loan tenure is over 5 years, which has been 60 months, then you pay over another 6 months, will become 66 months because you don't pay that 6 months. So that was, I think, the understanding based on certain illustrations that were circulated. However, when there was the announcement, the illustration, I guess, changed, right? So that confused people, which says that there is an accrued interest element in there. So you end up paying more than what you say. So if you take 100 ringgit, so for example, a 50,000 ringgit loan, you might have to pay 19 ringgit more. That was the illustration given by Bank Negara on Saturday, right, 1st of May. So that, I think, made people a bit worried because they feel, hey, that's not what we thought, right? Although technically the announcement, to be fair to the central bank, have always said that when it comes to compounded interest and accrued interest, it is up to the banks.
Correct.
So when it was first announced before the Prihatin package, the compounded interest, the banks actually announced we are not going to do that, right? The banks themselves, right? And then after that, I think in one of the interviews I did, I believe it's here as well in Astro, was about the accrued interest. So even for the B40, there are banks who do not charge accrued interest, for example, personal loan, right? So that means it has done before. That means for personal loan, if you are paying, taking installment and paying personal loan of 10 or let's say 10 ringgit a month, you continue to pay 10 ringgit a month, and then after, if you take the moratorium, you don't pay this 10 ringgit a month for 6 months, but there will be no accrued interest. So similarly, for back to the hire purchase, right? So I'm saying that it's been done before. So the question is, people are asking, why can't you do that for the hire purchase, right? So today, obviously, I was clear, I think, in my Facebook statement that I feel that the banks, given the challenges that the country faces, the people face today, should consider relooking at this, basically allowing the installment, basically making sure that people continue to enjoy this installment later, but without any element of accrued interest.
So what you're saying is that the discretion is with the banks. Yes, there is a moratorium, but it's up to the banks and the customer and their contract with the customer.
Yes. Well, the banks have done a lot, to be fair,
Okay.
right? But I think in this case, there's still, in my view, room to allow the accrued interest element for hire purchase to be, well, basically not to have it. Right?
So now with what has happened, right? So plain and simply, can banks still waive the interest if they want to?
Well, the thing is, it is up to them, right? Like I said, people are expecting their installment to be the same and not pay anything more, even when they pay later, right? So if the bank can reconsider this, and I hope take plight into the rakyat's concerns and difficulties that they are facing today. This is abnormal times, unprecedented times. So I think banks should help if they can, right?
Okay, so it has been more than a month since Bank Negara issued that first statement,
more than a month,
more than a month, and the graphics illustration. Why were these choices not made clear to borrowers the first time? And so if this issue is now down to miscommunication, how could it have persisted for a month?
Well, that's a good question. I think, again, when we have an FAQ, you make an announcement, people read the FAQ more than the announcement, simply because they want to know what's relevant to them, right? In this case, one of the FAQs said that you pay the same installment every month, even if you take the moratorium, right? I think that was probably an honest error there on the part of whoever that prepared the FAQ. And so I think this is why people are confused and in a way angry, right? Because subsequently that was rectified. In fact, I think it was rectified before, but no one knew, because you read the FAQ once, you don't read it again, right? So it arises again because of the hire purchase and Sharia guideline, which means that the customer have to consent. So I think from there they were saying, hey, I thought earlier we continue to pay installment at the same rate, because it's at the same fixed rate, because hire purchase is fixed rate. But we didn't know that there was an element of accrued interest in there.
Okay, so if you can help illustrate for the Makcik Kias and Pak Salehs in Malaysia who has taken up the moratorium, thinking that they will have extra cash in their pocket and who have skipped payments for May and April, what kind of recourse do they have right now? Do they have to pay penalty? What's next?
Yeah. So basically, the whole idea of moratorium is not you get interest free or principal free, right? What it is to ease the cash flow. Right? So what I think people want in the case of hire purchase is that whatever installment, that 6-month installment which they will have to pay later, remains the same. So I think it's just as simple as that. If you pay 100 ringgit now, you defer it, you also want to continue to pay 100 ringgit more.
Well, to help each cash flow problems at this time, but in another few months, by October, you either have to pay a lump sum or...
No, you don't have to pay a lump sum.
There are a few choices.
You have a few choices, but obviously if you don't, if you have the money, then you pay lump sum. But obviously, if you have the money in the first place, why would you take it?
Okay, so let's talk about the conversation that you have with the banks, with Bank Negara and MOF. What led to this recent guideline or announcement? What triggered that?
Which one? The announcement on
Thursday night by Bank Negara.
Thursday night. Again, it was triggered. I think that it's between the Bank Negara and the banks, because by law, based on Hire Purchase Act 1967, they need a consent from the customers. I think it wasn't made clear before. So that announcement was about that, about the HP Act 1967, also the Sharia guidelines, which requires consent from borrowers to qualify for the moratorium.
So what you're saying is it's not a reversal of decision, but a miscommunication.
It is not a reversal, because moratorium is still automatically eligible for the hire purchase borrowers and the fixed rate Islamic loan borrowers. What confused people was the illustration. I think that we must be honest with ourselves. There was an error in one of the illustrations which led to the confusion.
Okay. Now, I want to get the point of view of banks as well, because we know that it's not easy for banks to step in like that. The government want to help people affected by COVID-19, but such measures also will put banks under pressure. So as someone who used to run a bank, how will your suggestion to advise banks to waive the interest, how would that impact the financial stability of banks and then the economy?
Yeah. Well, as a banker, if I think it would have impact the financial stability of the markets, I wouldn't say it, right? But I think the confusion arises again from what the banks can do and cannot do. So I think different banks will be impacted differently, right? Because they have different sizes of portfolio. In this case, the total loan size portfolio in the country for hire purchase is about 160 billion ringgit. That's about 8% of the total asset size of the country. So it is still large, right? But different banks will have different exposure. Some banks have larger exposure, so they will be impacted differently. But my view is that the banks, given I'm talking about the accrued interest or for just hire purchase, they should have some room to play. Of course, there will be a negative impact in terms of earnings, right? But I think, given, like I said earlier, we are in an uncharted territory. Everyone is suffering. So I think it's time for everyone who can help to come in and help.
So if I have a hire purchase loan and I took up the moratorium, my next step will be wait for my bank to contact me.
Yes. Have they?
I don't have a hire purchase loan, but okay, that's just for the understanding of our viewers, because there has been a lot of questions and information out there. So thank you for that clarification.
Welcome.
We'll have to take a short break, but when we come back, let's look at the economic damage from COVID-19 and what is the steps to recovery. We have been in MCO for the past 46 days, and we are set to restart and revive the economy on Monday. But how are we going to do it? We'll talk about that shortly. Stay with us.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Sebagai anak Pahang, kaweh nak sama-sama menyeru kepada demo semua supaya tolonglah disiplin dan patuh dengan apa yang kerajaan nak kita lakukan. Jangan sesuka hati demo orang, nak keluar masuk ke tempat yang tidak sepatutnya, kerana dengan cara demo buat gitu, habis semua orang akan turut mendapat kesan yang tidak baik, kerana bila kita keluar, kita akan mudah terdedah dengan segala virus yang tidak baik, iaitu corona virus ataupun COVID-19. Sama-sama kita jaga orang yang kita sayang, jaga keluarga kita. Jangan sesekali kita mendedahkan diri kita pada keadaan yang tidak sepatutnya. Lebih lagi kalau melibatkan ramai orang. Okay? Jadilah rakyat Malaysia yang berdisiplin dan sama-sama kita bantu frontliner kita dalam mengharungi dugaan yang sangat hebat ini. Kaweh mewakili orang Pahang, tolonglah demo, tolong sangat jaga kesihatan dan jaga keluarga kita. Dengar pesanan ni daripada saya, Siti Nurhaliza, Popaleh, orang Pahang. Ayuh, kita menang. Ayuh, kita mesti menang.
Assalamualaikum, nama teman Awi. Teman ingin menyeru kepada semua rakyat Malaysia, patuhilah arahan pihak berkuasa, khususnya kepada demo yang menonton Astro Awani ini.
Welcome back to Agenda Awani with me, Cynthia Ng, and we are still with the Minister of Finance, Tengku Zafrul. Let's now talk about restarting the economy. The Prime Minister announced that on Friday that the nation faces a loss of 2.4 billion ringgit every day with the implementation of the MCO. How was this amount? How did you came to this amount, 2.4 billion? Is this a loss of government tax revenue? What is it actually?
Yeah. So that 2.4 billion ringgit a day that was announced in the speech by the Prime Minister is about, it's based on various assumptions, but it is in terms of production of goods and services for the whole economy due to the MCO. Yeah, that's how we.
That's it. That
it.
makes up the 2.4 billion.
Yes, a day.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what about other aspects of the economic damage? For instance, tax collection.
Yeah. So if we look at what's happening, well, what has happened to us in the past maybe 6 weeks now, we're going to the MCO, going to be in 2 months soon. So every day, the impact of 2.4 billion growth will have an impact to GDP, right? Bank Negara recently announced when they released their annual report, they expect GDP growth for the country to be between -2% to 5%. That assumption was based on MCO of 2 weeks. So now MCO, like I said, is more than 6 weeks, right? It's going to the 7th week. So obviously the economic impact is greater. Hence why we also introduced the stimulus package, Prihatin, which is expected to bring GDP growth up by 2.8%. So in terms of revenue collection, definitely will be impacted, given that, companies who are not able to operate during that period will have incomes, or their earnings will be affected, and therefore they will be paying less taxes, right? So it all depends on how we restart this economy, right, and how fast the economy can recover, so that the government's revenue is not as impacted by the economy.
Now, some people think that it was a rush decision to start the economy, a large sector of the economy, by next week, fearing resurgence of the COVID-19 cases. Why not wait until May 12 when the next phase of the MCO was supposed to end?
Yeah. So let me assure you that this thought process was done well. I mean, they were very done through various stages, right? We had a meeting at the Economic Action Council, we had a meeting at the National Security Council, then we had a meeting at the Cabinet to discuss about the opening up of the economy, right? It's not something that we just decided in a rush. And if you know, even during the MCO1, the essential services and one industry in particular, E&E, was allowed to operate. In MCO3, we opened to another 8 industries. So the economy was opened in stages, right? But if you look at the big picture, let's look at the big picture, which the Prime Minister mentioned again in his speech, the 6R. So we had the first one is to resolve. The first R is resolve, which means that we need to ensure that we contain COVID-19.
Right.
We need to flatten the curve, right? It's about flattening the curve. It's not about getting zero COVID infection, right? And the other one is about, the second R is about resilience, which is stage 2. So stage 2 is where we want to make sure that through the Prihatin economic package, we will protect the rakyat and also the businesses. So we've done the stage 1, which is resolve, and a stage 2, which is resilience, and now stage 3, which is to restart the economy. So stage 3 is being done, hopefully starts on Monday, right? It will start on Monday. So we looked at basically the stage 1, stage 2 to make sure that stage 1, stage 2 is done properly, and we've seen that, and we've seen the flattening of the curve. And what's important is also the healthcare capacity. So the healthcare capacity of the country today is about 30% utilization, right? So we've seen that it's not under stress. Testing is done as well. I think by next week we expect testing to be done about 22,000 a day, right? And we look at the number of areas that are green, it has improved, right? So these things are all taken into consideration, and at the same time, it is a balance, to me anyway, between lives and livelihoods. So we can see that the flattening of the curve for COVID-19, right? But we also need to make sure that the economic curve as well flattens, because like you said, right, it's going down, -2%, going down further as we extend the MCO. So it's now time to also flatten the economic curve and get that recovery for the country.
Okay, but speaking of restarting the economy then, how do we drive businesses up again? How do we get consumers to spend? Because, for instance, this moratorium confusion, right? People thought they have more money in their pockets, but they possibly don't now to have to save up for paying off their loan. This issue has a psychological impact on people willing to go out, willing to spend, plus the fear of cases resurging. What are your thoughts on that? How are you going to deal with that?
Yeah. So let me just, humbly correct you about the cash flow. So the moratorium is still there. They still have the cash then to spend in these 6 months, right? But the one that you talk about is more the accrued interest later, right? But so basically, we look at the conditional MCO that was announced. In the short term to medium term, we are going to go to stage 4, right? Stage 4 is basically on recovery. So the recovery plan, the economy recovery plan is going to be important because you need to restart the economy slowly. You asked me just now, open on the 5th, but some companies may not be ready, right? So they will open when they are ready to comply with the SOP. So what's key then for the long-term economy, mid-term and short-term economy is about reskilling, about capability building. The importance of reskilling and job matching for the people, because we're talking about unemployment. Today, unemployment is around 3.2%. That's around 566,000 people based on information that I got from SOCSO, right? So if that may increase, right? Because as the economy slows down, there will be an expectation of unemployment going up. That's why we, in the package Prihatin, what we've done is to have this wage subsidy available for companies, especially SME, to make sure that they do not retrench people. That subsidy alone is about 13.8 billion ringgit. What's important that drives the economy is also consumer spending, which what you talked about earlier. So now we have seen how people are getting more comfortable in spending money through digital. So one way to do it is to get the digital channels to improve and making sure that customer confidence is there. Right? So customer confidence is definitely important. The other one that is important is to make sure that we support the SME, all right, to ensure that they recover and continue to grow. And not forgetting this time in the recovery plan is also the mid-tier companies and the large companies, because investor confidence is important to drive that business confidence. To get coupled with customer confidence, we can hopefully have a better recovery.
Is the government looking at specific sectors first to tackle, perhaps sectors that have been impacted most by COVID-19?
Yeah. The sector that has been impacted most, in my view, is tourism, right? It has been hit first and probably last to recover, right? But having said that, in this case, COVID-19, no one escapes, right? So all industries are affected in varying degrees. So as a government, we need to look at all sectors to see how we can assist. That's why in the recovery plan, it has to be a bit more detailed in analyzing how we can support the industry.
Can they expect anything, future stimulus in the next week or two?
Not next week or two. I think to restart the economy will take 2 or 3 weeks. So the timeline that we have now that the Prime Minister has announced the conditional MCO, which starts on the 5th, I think by end of the month, hopefully after Raya 24th. So by end of the month, we can announce a recovery plan. But what's important also to take note and be mindful of is that the recovery plan, even if we've announced end of May, it has to be a dynamic plan. We need to be very clear that whenever there is a need, we need to move, start. We need to be an agile government where things are, as you know, are moving very fast. So action has to be taken very fast. So we don't have to wait for a plan as well. So let's say we have the economic recovery plan in end of May. So the stage 5 is actually about the 6R is revitalizing, which is, I hope, to be a plan between until end of the year. That's when we look at how to revitalize the economy.
Okay. I only have a couple of minutes left, but I want to get your thoughts on the cash injection to M40 and B40, because a lot of people who lost their jobs are from this sector, right? How much financial room does the government have to provide more cash aid, and is there a plan to do so? Yeah.
So the cash aid today, we're going to start giving the second phase of BPN again, actually on Monday, right? So total in the announced Prihatin budget is 10 billion. In fact, we had 2 million more people who have applied and approved, 2 million number approved, so that means it's actually 10.7. And we have this Bantuan Sara Hidup as well, BSH in June, 2.8. So in total, the government is going to give around 13.9 billion ringgit to B40 as well as M40. That is already budgeted, right? As we announced in Prihatin, and the BSH is budgeted in budget 2020. So I think until June, we should have adequate support to the B40 especially, right? And even not for the micro SMEs, we opened the application on the 1st, where 700,000, at least 700,000 SMEs will be able to apply for the grant, the grant Prihatin Khas, special grant Prihatin for the SME micro. That government has allocated around 2.1 billion ringgit.
Okay. Now, from your point of view, my last question here, because we're running out of time. As the architect of this Prihatin package, on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being the best, what's the score do you give for this implementation?
Well, first of all, I'm not the architect of Prihatin. It is a joint team effort. I think the whole cabinet was involved in preparing the Prihatin package led by our Prime Minister. In terms of rating, I think, if you ask me, I'll be very biased. So I think I should ask you, what do you think of how you should rate the Prihatin? But what's important is we must listen to feedback. We must be transparent. That's why we have Laksana to announce on a weekly basis what we are doing, right? We must be accountable if we are wrong, and we must make sure that we improve on things. There's always room for improvement, and I think it's key for us is always been on execution.
All right. All right. Thank you so much, Dato Sri, for coming to the show and to clarify some of the confusion that we had.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching. I will see you again next time. My name is Cynthia Ng. Good night.